I think the global platforms by default they win because they don't have to do anything. Like I mentioned, the Netflixes, um, their services are available like in Africa. They have no employees here or anything, right? Amazon, they say Amazon left. Amazon didn't really leave. I was watching Amazon Prime yesterday in Lagos. You can still access it. It's not an issue, right? Is local price in there, limited in limited places, etc. Right. So I think by default, we're such a small part of the global monetization story that by default it doesn't really matter. And in some cases, we're less than 1% of the actual revenue, budgets, and etc. So it just doesn't. We're just irrelevant. So by default, they win. I think the challenges with people like Showmax and MultiChoice and now Canal as being one big conglomerate is, they have these legacy businesses which are, have their own successes but still have their own challenges, and they can monetize those really well. I think they'll shrink costs and they'll focus on long-term plays. But in the end, in this part of the world, local content overwhelmingly dominates, right? So if you look at ratings on, DSTV, on GoTV, on Canal Plus, it is overwhelmingly like local content. Um, Even if you look at some of the top sort of content playing out from Africa on the likes of YouTube, etc., it typically is local, right? But it's a story where, like, pretty much everywhere in the world, content tends local because people obviously, jokes, skits, etc., really kind of resonate with people from whence this comes from. So I think ultimately, like, the global platforms will win by default because they don't have to really win in this market. One thing that Nigerians have been really good at is creating like relatively high quality content on pretty like limited budgets.
Yeah.
As long as they can continue to do that, I think they'll monetize it. I think strategically, there's some big mistakes that people are making, like putting all of their movies on YouTube, because I think that's just disastrous for the long-term value of the industry. But they're still able to monetize that, and I'm sure they'll continue to do that. So, yeah, I think in the end, as long as you can create a lot of really relatively high quality content and you have a large enough audience, I think you'll make money. And I think any money made in any because of Nigeria's such low cost and sort of I guess like low compensation market, anybody making any good money in the millions of naira is going to be doing very well in the context of Nigeria, right? So I think um, as long as that as long as that calculus still remains, then I think they'll be fine. The challenge of any type of, I guess, premium service is that you expect to spend like an abnormal amount of money, and it's going to take a huge amount of time. So I don't think people fully truly appreciate what that means. I think just sort of add one more thing. It's you think of Netflix as a super successful startup, which it kind of was a long time ago. But in order for Netflix to get their first 1 million subscribers, they spent about $450 million. Even for MultiChoice, which is by far the largest um, content platform on in Africa, they spent 9 years, and they actually had to still they're actually one of the founding shareholders of MTN. In order for them to fund the expansion of MultiChoice, they actually had to sell their founding in MTN in order to do that. So like these content plays, especially on a platform level, are really usually really expensive. Um, they usually take like sometimes up to 10 years to get there. I think from my perspective, like we raised what $40 million or so. We reinvested our existing revenue and capital and various other things to essentially build what we hoped to be like a really big business. In the end, I don't think it was really a capital thing that essentially kind of like caused us challenges in this part of the world. It's just people's like unwillingness to pay. Um, I think there are some things that Africans are willing to pay for, um, and there's some things that are just super price sensitive for. So I think that is why we typically have a scenario today where a lot of the actual content that people are consuming is largely free, and it still sort of has that struggle to monetize. So my sense is that I would love to see an indigenous owned platform, but again, my hope is that someone does do that. And that person has to be young and willing to commit the next 10, 15, 20 years of their life to do that. So yeah, it's going to be tough. Yeah, it's just going to be tough. And I think the challenge right now as well, to sort of like, dovetail that is the diaspora monetizes so well, from your Afrobeats artists to a lot of what Mollywood is trying to do in terms of like, generating income from overseas. The diaspora monetizes relatively much more easier than Africa at the moment. And that's something which I don't see that trend like reversing anytime soon.